What's up, everybody? Today's December 29th, 2020. Pretty good video for you today. We're going to talk about the Uranus Riddle that's involved with the Nashville bombing from Christmas Day. Now, over the past couple days, I made a pair of videos relating this entire ritual to the planet Venus. We also talked about a little bit about Mercury and the moon. It's as if all the planets that weren't involved in this past week's Great Conjunction got a little jealous of all the attention of Saturn and Jupiter. So in this video, we're going to take a look at how the planet Uranus falls into this riddle as well. And it's got everything to do with Pope Francis. So let's start with the strong connection between Pope Francis, the first ever Jesuit Pope, head of the Catholic Church, and the planet Uranus, which was discovered on the date March 13th, back in the year 1781. Well, March 13th is a significant date for Pope Francis. That's the date that he became the Pope back in the year 2013. Now, of course, there's numerology here in the date of his papacy beginning. We're looking at 3-13-13. Well, these are all prime numbers. Here you have the second, the sixth, and the sixth prime number. Well, Pope Francis is the 266th Pope, a number that we'll review in a second. Now, Pope Francis, his papacy began 2,784 months after Uranus's discovery. He was born on December 17th, meaning he just turned 84 years old. This aligns with his birth numerology, 12 plus 17 plus 19 plus 36 equals 84. And he's the first Jesuit pope. The word Jesuit equals 84. So does the Jesuit order in reverse reduction. Now, 84 isn't just a significant number to the Jesuit order, but it's also significant to the planet Uranus, which has an orbital period of about 84 Earth years. Now, if you look at the exact orbital period of Uranus, you'll find that it's 30,688 days and change. Well, look how old Pope Francis was on the date of the bombing in Nashville. 30,689, which is basically the exact same as Uranus's orbital period. This bombing occurred on a date with a life lesson number of 41. And in reduction, Uranus equals 41, also 22. This was the last date with 41 numerology in the year 2020. Now, we're going to talk about how this Nashville bombing was closely linked to the Oklahoma City bombing from 1995. Now, before I get into explaining why, or explaining the numerology of these connections, I want to explain why this is a connection, because there are several other major bombings that we could line this one up to, particularly the Boston one. But what really rings true here is the Oklahoma City bombing. And I say this because this is known as the OKC bombing. OKC. Well, on the same date as the Nashville bombing, we got the death of a man named Casey Jones. And he played his entire career in Boston, which is the site of another famous bombing at the Boston Marathon in 2013, the same year that Pope Francis became the Pope. But what's so interesting about Casey Jones is that he wore number 25 for the Celtics. Notice how he was born on the 25th of the month. He died on the 25th of the month. His death fell exactly 25 years and 250 days after the OKC bombing. Now, 25 is a significant number to the Pope. The word Pope equals 25 in reduction. And Pope Francis is not just the first Jesuit Pope, but the current president of the United States, Donald Trump, is the first Jesuit president. And notice how Trump also has this gematria of 25. Well, if you measure from the date that Trump took office to the date of the Christmas bombing, you find out he was in office for exactly 205 weeks, which represents the number 25. And what I just found out in my comments section is that during the bombing, right before the bomb went off, there was a song being played over the loudspeaker in the RV. It was called Downtown. And not only was he parked downtown, obviously, but look how many days it had been since this song was recorded. 20,525 days. This is the only date, the recording date, the only one given for this song. So 25 of utmost significance. 25 also connects us to the element uranium. Notice how uranium sums to 97 in the standard alphabetic order. Well, this is the 25th prime number. And of course, uranium, which is an integral element in nuclear bombs, got its name from the planet Uranus. So now that we've established the connection between the OKC bombing and the Nashville bombing, let's get into the numerology of Timothy McVeigh and find out how his entire life was coded by the numbers of Uranus. Before we get to him, let's start with Anthony Warner, since I have that up on the post first. And on Wikipedia, we have a new little section for Anthony Quinn Warner, a man who the media is telling everybody was a hermit. That's a big word they're using. And of course, think about how virtually everybody has been a hermit to some degree in 2020. So I don't know how you're supposed to really avoid that, but once again, turning people against their neighbors who they don't know everything about. So check out Anthony Warner's birthday, January 17th of 1957. This is a date with numerology of both 94 and 31. Check out how the planet Uranus equals 94 and 31. We'll actually look at how all of these numbers are coded in. Now, if you measure from Anthony Warner's birthday to the birthday of Timothy McVeigh, the other major bomber, you get exactly 11 years and 97 days. Planet Uranus equals 1197 using English extended gematria. Now, in reduction, planet Uranus sums to 72. Notice how its discovery on March 13th left 72 days in the year. This is also the gematria of Jesuit order in the same cipher. In satanic gematria, the phrase blood sacrifice equals 611. Timothy McVeigh was a blood sacrifice for the planet Uranus, which also sums to 611. And the date he was killed by execution was June 11th, written 6/11. Furthermore, the date 6/11 is the 162nd day of the year. This lines up with planet Uranus in both ordinal and reverse gematria, 162. Uranus sums to 68 in the reverse alphabetic order. McVeigh was born in the year 68. So we got into the gematria of uranium, the 25th prime number, connecting us to the OKC bombing, among other things. And what's interesting about uranium is that it's number 92 on the periodic table of elements. And in the reverse alphabetic order, uranium equals 92. I also want to point out the weight of 238 for this atom, or the atomic weight specifically. The bombing was the 238th lunar phase since 9/11. And you better believe that there's a good chance uranium or some nuclear explosive was used at the World Trade Center to bring those buildings down. Now, the number 92 when we connect this to the calendar, I want to show you how 92 years equates to exactly 1,104 months. And this 114 number is very significant to the planet Uranus. It was discovered on a date with 114 numerology. When Timothy McVeigh carried out the Oklahoma City bombing, he was a span of 11 months and 4 weeks after his birthday. And take a look at his birthday, born on a date with full numerology of 114, which also happened to be the 114th day of a leap year. And if you measure from his birthday back to the birthday of Anthony Warner, you get 4,114 days. So as we mentioned, Pope Francis, his papacy began on 3/13/13. And again, 3/13/13, the second, sixth, and sixth prime numbers. He's the 266th pope. So it stands to reason that we get a ritual related to the periodic table of elements, which sums to 266 in the standard alphabetic order. And to make this even more interesting, if you measure from the date that Uranus was founded to the date that Pope Francis became the Pope, you get exactly 232 years, another number which is significant to the periodic table. Now, when you read up on uranium, you find a pretty interesting detail. Notice how uranium-235 is the only naturally occurring fissile isotope. And what this means is that it's capable of sustaining a nuclear fission chain reaction. So uranium-235, the only naturally occurring one that does this. Well, in the reverse alphabetic order, our bomber, Anthony Quinn Warner, sums to 235. If you're familiar with my work, you know I talk about 235 on a regular basis. This is the number of synodic months, or lunar phases, in the Metonic cycle, which syncs up almost perfectly with 19 years. And 19 years is pretty interesting because Timothy McVeigh was executed 19 years ago. Furthermore, the bombing was 197 days after McVeigh's death. Metonic cycle equals 197, so does 19 years. Remember, every 19 years, 7 of those have a 13th lunar phase, or a 13th month. Now, if you go from a solar or lunar eclipse and measure out exactly one Metonic cycle ahead, which is 6,940 days, you'll often get another solar or lunar eclipse, because eclipses are often separated by Metonic cycles. The Metonic cycle is essentially a reset for the moon. The Society of Jesus, or Jesuit order as they are also known, has an emblem which strongly resembles a solar eclipse. Now, if you measure from the first Great American Total Solar Eclipse in 2017 to the date of this Nashville bombing, and notice how this total solar eclipse did pass over Nashville, it was exactly a span of 1,223 days after that eclipse. Jesuit order equals 1223 in Jewish Gematria. This is also the value of 600, 6. By the way, 600, 6 sums to 313. Very relevant because this is the date that Uranus was founded and the date that the Pope became the Pope. Also notice how Jesuit sums to 1004. This is the English value of recreational vehicle. And recreational vehicle also sums to 1968, which is the year that Timothy McVeigh was born. So many interesting alignments. Another thing about this whole 666 that I just mentioned, when you spell out 666, it equals 238, just like the atomic weight of uranium. And remember, the moon, an average of 238,000 miles from the Earth. And then when you write out 666, you get 1197. Earlier, I mentioned how planet Uranus equals 1197. And these two bombers were born 11 years, 97 days apart. All tying into the 666 code. I mean, how often do we do this, right? They love this number, guys, 666. Put it all over the place. In fact, Timothy James McVeigh, his full name, it equals 90 and 99, which is an upside down 666. A couple more interesting things about the name Anthony Quinn Warner. Notice how it has matching gematria with Nashville, Tennessee, where he is said to have lived a long time. In my first video on the bombing, I talked a lot about the number 911 and 119, which was integral to this. That's because 911 service was knocked out a span of 9 months, 11 days before AT&T's anniversary. AT&T building 119, just like AT&T. If you flip this number upside down, you get 116. And the name Warner equals 116 in Jewish gematria. The number 911, the 156th prime number, look at Anthony Warner and Anthony Quinn Warner, both with Sumerian gematria of 156. And just think about the name Warner and how bizarre it is. You know, remember this bombing was at the Batman building in Nashville, or right down the street from it. No doubt this is the building that's most iconic in the imagery of the explosion. So in my last video, I explained how this was all related to the Batman movie theater shooting, because the bombing at the Batman building happened the same day as another DC Comics superhero film was released. Now, AT&T, who owns this Batman building, back in the year 2018, they merged with Time Warner. So how strange is it that this guy's named Warner? And on top of that, think about how he had a countdown clock on the RV, like a timer, and it was warning people that the thing was going to explode. He's a time warner. It's insane. Also, Time Warner equals 63. This man was 63 years old. The bombing occurred at exactly 6:30 in the morning, we're told. All ritualistic numbers. See my last video if you want more details on the Venus riddle that was so heavy with this bombing. I noticed that Anthony Warner sums to 175, which was a integral number to the magic square of Venus, where every row and column sums to 175. What I also found was interesting is that Warner was a Capricorn. Now, Capricorn is exalted by the planet Mars, which has matching gematria with Moon. The Moon played a heavy part in this bombing. Now, this bombing occurred the same week that Anthony Warner turned 34 Martian years old, his exalted planet. And think about how the name Warner equals 34. Well, his birthday was January 17th. Now, I know a lot of you guys aren't familiar with the date January 17th, but this is actually very significant in relation to the moon. Back in 1923, we began counting lunar phases on the date January 17th. So Warner was born exactly 34 years after the Brown lunation number system began. And look at the gematria of Anthony Quinn Warner. It matches Brown lunation number exactly. Both of them born on January 17th. Furthermore, the moon has a 57-degree range of declination. The word moon has a gematria value of 57. Anthony Warner was born in the year 57. And then, as we mentioned, his full name has numbers that we find in the moon's metonic cycle. 235 and the reflection of 1991, the two primary numbers that make this cycle up. One last thing I wanted to touch on in relation to the Pope being so significant to this entire thing, him returning 1 Uranus year old on the date of this bombing. So as we mentioned, the Pope was born on December 17th. Now, the film that came out on the day of the bombing was Wonder Woman 84. And I should have pointed out how obvious the connection is with Wonder Woman 84. This entire bombing ritual having to do with the number 84, the number of years in Uranus's orbital period. Well, there's an actor in this film named Pedro Pascal. Now, Pedro Pascal plays the Mandalorian on Disney+. And the original Mandalorian, Boba Fett, that actor died on Pope Francis's birthday, just a week before this bombing. So this was a big part of it too. And again, I have a whole video on this. So feel free to check my channel for my first video on the Wonder Woman ritual. I have 2 of them, and now I guess I have 3 of them. But again, the depth to which these events are coded never fails to leave my mind spinning once I'm all done with this, All right, guys. Peace, love, God bless. That's it for this video. Have a good night. See ya.